This segment is brought to you by Jig Masters. Step up your game with high-quality performance jigs, spinner baits, buzz baits, and more from jigmasters.com. And always, when in doubt, get the jig out.
Welcome to the Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. This is the final cast segment with your hosts Brad Hicks and Josh Eldridge, where we cast our final opinions on all products, good and bad. Welcome to the final cast. You're listening to the final cast on the Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brad. Josh, Jimmy, you guys need to stop doing that in the green room.
Hey, I'm jealous of y'all's intro music. It's very my taste, so I got to get the head banging in while I can.
Dude, I was laughing. I was like, I'm going to laugh when I start this.
I can't help it, man. It's a good tune.
It is. I like it.
It's
me and you.
I'm loving the new program where we can actually we can hear it when we record and it's not just edited in after.
Yeah.
It kind of hypes you up for the show.
Yeah. I like it too. It's pretty cool.
And then Brad talks and brings it all back down.
Yeah, it's like, oh, yeah.
Oh, that's why we don't listen to this guy.
If you can all see, we don't have Brad's lovely face tonight. His video keeps lagging out, so you're going to see this weird little non-photo avatar thing. Do you see it too when he talks? It the highlights a little bit.
Yeah, highlights.
Oh, it does. I never noticed.
Yeah.
So Brad's basically a computer program.
He's been reduced to a bubble.
Well, let's get into the show. No, let's not hold off any longer. We got Andrew Stern from Bending Branches on the show. How you doing?
Good. How we doing, fellas?
Great.
Good.
You're doing killer, man.
Good.
So what we like to do when we introduce our guests, we'd like to get a background on them and what they do and everything they're involved in. So hand it over to you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. So I've been at Bending Branches for almost a decade to the day, actually. And 32, living in Western Wisconsin, working in marketing, been running marketing for Branches for a while. And what I do for fun, love to golf, bike, exercise, get outside, travel, hike, pretty much anything outside. Most of my background's in kayaking. So I've been a pretty serious kayaker for as long as I've done this. I can pretty much do anything in a boat. Still have work to do on casting, but I can pull my weight when I need to. But yeah, that's me. Yeah, nothing too crazy here.
Awesome. So let's go into the background of Bending Branches, how they got started and how they got to where they are now.
Yeah, cool. So we started, our company started in 1982. So we're going on 4 decades as an organization, and we started in Minneapolis, Minnesota as a company that manufactured just 2 things. We manufactured canoe paddles, wooden canoe paddles in the summer months, and we would manufacture hockey sticks in the winter months. And that was it. And that's all we did for almost 2 full decades until 2002 is manufacture those goods. So if you're an older hockey player, especially from the upper Midwest or Canada, you're probably quite familiar with Bending Branches hockey sticks. They were a favorite for a long time, especially collegiately, known for that sort of thing. And then canoe sticks for old white folks, that love the joy of wood in a canoe. And then in 2002, we discontinued our manufacturing of hockey sticks. We got out of hockey. And that was a really big deal in that industry. We discontinued manufacturing goods because the market was growing too fast, and the Eastons of the world were making it unprofitable for us to go after Wayne Gretzky and others like that. So we got out of hockey and we invested in this new sport, or new at the time, called kayaking. And in the early 2000s, people started really embracing kayaking. Cabin owners and families and couples like to get out on the water and do recreational kayaking. In 7 to 12 foot boats. And that's the sport that we decided to embrace. So we became a canoe and kayak paddle manufacturer. And that's all we did. And that's all we've done. And in 2010, at that time. So think back to 2010. This is well before kayak fishing was what it is today, right? So there was only Hobie making pedal drives. You know, they're one of their first Mirage drive patents at the time in 2010. Native was fresh into kayak fishing. Jackson had just designed some of their first boats with the Kusa, and a lot of those companies came to us and they said, "Hey, we need paddles. We need kayak paddles. The current market's not working for us. It's not sufficient. They're not long enough. They're not durable enough. There's nothing that speaks to us. Can you make paddles for us?" And we started to work with Drew Gregory and people like that, some of the early, founders and innovators in the industry. And we said, "What do you want? What do you need? What works? What are you looking for? What do you do with it?" And in 2011, we introduced our first family of kayak fishing specific paddles. And I remember Outdoor Retailer that very first summer, people laughed at us. They were like, "What? This is never going to work. People are never going to fish from kayaks like long term. They want something with a motor. They want to relax. They want to drink beer and tell stories." And we said, "All right, well, we're going to go after it because we feel like there's a market here." And we were the first company to embrace kayak fishing paddles. And then 2, 3, 4 years later, everyone was ripping off our stuff. Everyone was going after kayak fishing paddles and getting after that market. We didn't have a single competitor that didn't go after the same market that we were already embracing. And that's how we got started in this industry. And the sport's evolved, right? So we're not stupid. People are fishing from pedal drive kayaks a lot. I mean, there's more enthusiast anglers in kayaks that are fishing from mechanized boats versus pedal boats, and that's something we're fully aware of, we're fully embracing, we're fully tuned into. We do our research, we listen to you guys 100%, and I would say I'm sure we're going to talk about this in more detail, but I mean, well, how does a paddle company stay relevant in this ever evolving market? And it's something I'm excited to talk to you about. But yeah, that's the background on us, almost 4 decades. And now when you look at our company, we do everything. I mean, if you paddleboard, if you whitewater kayak, canoe, fish from kayaks, I mean, you name it, we've got something specifically for you. So that's we're a pretty cool company. We got, let's see, we in a normal year we'd have about 40 employees, 36 to 40 employees here at our factory in Western Wisconsin. But kayak fishing and paddle sports has just exploded in 2020. I mean, as unfortunate as the COVID pandemic has been, outdoor recreation is astronomically insane.
For sure.
And I'm sure you guys are talking. I mean, you guys are the Gear podcast, so I'm sure you guys are talking with people who are all, reaping the rewards of this current demand. And we've certainly been fortunate as well. But so our factory right now, I think even in the winter months when normally we'd be scaling back a little bit, I think right now we have 58 employees.
Wow.
And our December right now, so the December that we just wrapped up was twice our best December ever, and 3.5 times our December of 20. Let's see, but that would be 2020. Yeah, so 2020. So I mean, that just shows you still how crazy this market is right now.
That's impressive. I didn't realize it was that crazy for you guys.
The one question I've got from this is I would pay, well, it's a statement and a question. I would pay really good money for it, but y'all have got to have a Bending Branches hockey stick laying around somewhere that you want to get rid of.
Yeah, we do. We got a lot of them.
That would be a sick wall hanger that I would love.
Yeah, Jimmy, people send them to us.
Really?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I'll send you my address. They can just forward it to me.
I'll throw a photo on the Facebook page for people that want to see it. They're really cool. They were really robust, super heavy, incredibly heavy, but super robust.
Yeah, I found that really interesting. I never knew that about Bending Branches. So that is pretty cool. Do you have a favorite hockey team then?
No, I don't really like hockey.
I got you.
I mean, you can't live in the Upper Midwest and not embrace hockey. You'd be thrown out of your in-laws. But I mean, I would probably have to say the Minnesota Wild. I mean, I'm from Wisconsin, born and raised, and there's no team here, so I'd probably have to say our fellas to the west.
Oh,
that's cool, man. Really cool.
I'm just glad he didn't say Penguins.
I know, because we would have had a bromance.
Jeez.
Let's see, you guys. So Josh, you and Brad are from Ohio, right?
Yeah, we actually, before I moved, Brad and I lived within 5 minutes of each other. And it was funny because we didn't meet each other really until not this past summer, the summer before. And I was like, hey, dude, you want to go fishing? And then one day I dropped him off and I was cracking up because we met up. Or no, I don't remember what it was. For some reason, maybe it was when I met up, we were dropping some products off to each other. And I stopped by his house. I'm like, Brad, dude, I live just straight up the road from you, 5 minutes away.
Yep.
And but yeah, we're both from the Dayton, Ohio area.
Dayton, yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool.
That's awesome.
So let's get into a little paddle talk. You guys want to start out with? I know Jimmy's biting at the bit to talk about the Navigator. You want to start there?
Sure. It's a great paddle. They all look really good. I was probably attracted just to that wood finish more than anything, and I'd really just like if you break it down. I mean, obviously, no trade secrets on how it's made or anything. I know you don't want to get rid of that, but for anybody looking at a carbon fiber shaft, wooden, bladed paddle, if you just want to talk about how that came to be, or just whatever you want to.
Yeah. So the Angler Navigator, it's been around a couple of years now. So if you just roll the rewind back a little bit. So I mean, we've done wood forever. I mean, that's how we started. That's what we do. We specialize in wood. And if you don't think about kayak fishing specific product, but you think about canoeing product, think about stuff your grandparents and parents would use. Benny Branches was known because our wood we had some of the best woods, durable woods, dense woods, long lasting woods. Our varnish, so the finish on the wood is one of our patents that people try and rip off constantly, and I think is pretty proprietary. The rock guard, which is that wooden tip protection. I mean, that's how our company got started in 1982. Our founders started protecting canoe paddles with that rock guard. It's like a rollerblade ball, heated up, melted, and molded onto the ingrained into the wood to protect it from cracking and warping and spreading like wood does when it gets wet and expands over time. And then our glues. So our glue, how we get those pieces of wood to stick together is our third patent and what's proprietary. So I mean, you think about it, we've been doing it for 4 decades. I mean, we know it better than anyone. So when we decided to introduce wood into fishing, it was a no-brainer. And how it started was a lot of our team members were buying the kayak navigator, not the fishing navigator, the kayak navigator, which is a navigator that's short in length, long skinny blades, and it's meant for sea kayaking. And we were like, guys, stop using this paddle. It's not for you. It's not robust. It's not robust enough. It's not designed for the weight in your boat. It's not designed for what you guys are doing. And they were like, then make us one that does. I'm like, okay. And that's what we did. So we took the traditional navigator, which has been around since 2009, and we made a more robust version of it.
A real quick question. Were they using that just based off aesthetics, or was there
aesthetic.
100%.
Aesthetics? And another thing that we didn't realize, but our team told us. So if you ask like a Jameson Redding or a Drew Gregory or one of those guys that was a part of the early concept, Jameson Redding will tell you he actually invented it. He for the sake of his ego, let's just say he did, in case he's listening. But anyways. Yes, mainly aesthetics. But what he said the wood is way quieter, and he said if you're competitive, or if you're doing any type of specific treading to get to a certain location, like noise means more than people realize. And compared to plastic or composites, the wood blade was a big deal to him. So that was how it got started, is the original navigator and the quietness. And then we said, okay, so one of the things that you pay for when you pay for our stuff is the engineering that goes into it behind it. You buy a cheap paddle, an Asian source paddle, a private label paddle, like there's no testing behind it. I'm sure it's fully functional. It might get you what you want to do, but what you're paying for is somebody that literally tests it, somebody that says, okay, if you got a guy who's 350 pounds, he's got an 80-pound kayak and he's got another 50, 75 pounds of gear in it, what type of paddle do you need that's going to fit this application? And then when he's got a brace, or he's in rapids, or if he's going to push off something, like what does it need? And that's how the Navigator evolved into something bigger, stronger. It's by no means a light paddle. I don't believe it's light at all, especially compared to something like the Angler Pro. But it's designed to be light and quiet and stiff and robust, and really kind of take on any of those conditions that people want. It's beautiful. That's what most people are attracted to. But I, when somebody says, why would I buy the Angler Navigator? I say it's quiet, it's strong, it's beautiful, and it's going to last a really long time.
Yeah, and I can, one of the guys that talked me into getting it. I mean, I liked it right off the get go because it's like a good looking wood panel wagon, man. That thing's looks sharp. But he was talking about like when in the spring when he's bed fishing, that's the paddle he goes to because it's so quiet. And I've noticed, like, if you watch the water when you make a paddle stroke, the way it runs off that blade versus, I've got I can't remember. It's like the Cryptek 260 Angler Pro. And like, I think that one carves better as far as like making hard turns, but you can hear the water run off of it a little more. And just like, if you watch, it's like how much water the paddle's displacing versus the other, the Navigator's just a step up in my opinion. And I don't think it's too much heavier.
I don't either.
They're pretty close to me. I mean,
yeah.
I think it's what 3 ounce difference or something like that from the Angler Pro.
It's 5.
5. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's that much heavier in my opinion.
Yeah, but in our world, every quarter ounce matters. Quite a bit. So sure. 5 ounces to us is.
Like see, and when I'm talking paddles with somebody and they're like, why buy a $299 paddle? I'm like, I'm telling you,
hold this one.
That's what I give them the paddle. I let them hold this one, and then I go over to our shop, let them hold the other paddle, like competitor's paddle, and they're like, holy crap! I understand why. I'm like, if you're paddling with that heavier paddle all day long, you're gonna get tired quick. I've done it.
Yeah, weight's a big deal, and that's our livelihood, so our origin is, before fishing, like I said, is to be the lightest paddle at every price point. And that was a mindset we had to shift. I mean, we still are motivated by being the lightest paddle at every price point, but beyond that, it has to be functional. Okay. So if you're going to put it in an application where it's going to break, you're welcome to buy 4 $30 to $40 or $50 paddles, when they break, when you put them in applications they're not designed for. But just today, I took a call from a guy who's had a paddle for 4 years, took care of it like it was his baby. It's a $200 paddle, had to convince his wife. Basically, it was like taking a second mortgage to buy a $200 paddle. And he accidentally drove over it. And he's like, what am I do? My wife's going to kill me. I can't do this again. And I was just like, well, we'll replace the shaft. That's fine. Yeah, just send it to us and we'll put a new shaft on there. And he's like, seriously? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. We're replacing 35-year-old paddles all the time, dude. And just
that's awesome.
Send it in. We'll get you fixed up. That's what you pay for. We got 60 people here in Western Wisconsin who, you need something to do. So give them something to build. Our technicians need something to do. So, absolutely.
That's awesome. See, that's a company. That's what I look for in a company. That somebody that takes care of their customers like that. It's awesome. A lot of the times you don't see that nowadays for whatever reason. They'll make you pay like a small fee or anything, something like that, just to get it back in working order,
Yeah. I mean, I could talk about service and warranties and all that stuff for an entire podcast on its own. But
yeah,
I mean, you can't be a paddle company for 40 years if you don't stand behind your product. And generally speaking, every time you do a warranty claim, if the company takes care of you, they're losing money. And we realize that and we don't care, but it's more important that you get something you're proud of, get something that's right, get something that lasts.
Well, it'll make return customers. I mean, they may keep that paddle for themselves forever, but like me, like I need to get a paddle for my wife. Got a paddle for my daughter recently for her, one of the Whispers. And it, you take care of people, they come back. I mean, I think I've had 3 of them now. Do I need 3 paddles? No, but bought them anyway. Like,
yep.
Yeah.
So let's switch over to the Angler Pro, and this is where I wanted Josh to talk a little bit about it because he's owned one, and he actually was the one that got me into using mine, and he let me use it on my first trip. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I started out with the Angler Scout, and my first boat was the Coosa HD, and I kind of got into kayak fishing and almost took myself right out of it because the first kayak trip I ever went on was borrowing somebody's little sit inside Field and Stream, and it was awful. Most uncomfortable thing I'd probably ever done in my life. Like, I'd been canoeing and I'd never been kayaking, and it was awful. And so, but I kind of still really wanted to do it. So I just waited around and actually saved up money and got a nice kayak. And it was a Coosa HD back in like 2015. And so I got bad advice. And this is something, Andrew, that I want you to touch on with people in regards to what kind of length of paddle they should get and what you should really kind of look into. There's a big mistake that I made, and I see a lot of people make it, is when they may go blow the extra money on a kayak or something like that they necessarily don't need, and they don't really take in consideration how important a paddle is. And my experience was getting that Angler Scout. It's not a bad paddle by any means. What I did wrong was I got the wrong size. And when that happened, I was using a 240 and a 34-inch wide kayak. And so I used to hit the side of my kayak all the time because the way I kind of paddle, my paddle stroke tends to be more kind of upright and not far reaching. And so I would swipe the side of my boat constantly. Mix that with the Angler Scout is, like you were talking about, it's the lightest paddle that's out there for that price point, but it's not exactly light compared to like the Angler Pro, which I learned later on after I bought one that thing's probably been my favorite like accessory buy for kayak fishing I've ever had. Like, to this day, there's still not been one thing that changed everything for me, like made it much more enjoyable to be out on the water and that sort of thing. It was just crazy because like it even helped relieve my back pain because I was taking less paddle strokes, because of the efficiency and how lightweight it was. And, but yeah, like, so I was, I'm 6 feet tall. I have fairly long arms, and I was using a 240, and it didn't work right at all. And the reason why was I was told that somebody based it off of my height and my weight, like as me as a person, how big I was. And it had nothing to really kind of do with that. And I got to talk to somebody, and they kind of were like, it's more about your arm length and how you paddle like the most efficient way. Like, everybody's kind of got their own like difference. You want to touch on that? Yeah. We'll go over like, why the Angler Pro is such a good paddle as well.
So if I could, I would talk to every single fisherman or fisher lady that bought our paddle. I would talk to them before they bought it. And I would just be like, okay, tell me your specs. What boat are you in? How tall are you? Tell me about your paddling. Where are you going? What are you doing? How active? How long are you out? Those types of questions. And I would every person could get specific size. So one of the biggest problems we have as a paddle company is we want you to paddle more. The more you paddle, the more you fish, the more likely you are to embrace it and upgrade your gear and get, whatever. You understand. But the problem is people, they do one of two things. They don't invest the time in finding the right paddle. They just spent $1,500 on a kayak. They've already spent a ton of money on their other gear, rods, tackle, bait, whatever. And they're like, now I got to buy a paddle and a PFD. I'm exhausted. Like, I just tell me what I need. And they neglect, or they don't do the right research when they completely forget that that's your motor. I mean, would you neglect the motor of your car before you drove it off a lot? Of course not. Right. And it's really the same thing. So sizing is a huge deal. To break down the size specifically, first of all, what most people do is they default to our kayaking sizing guide, just kayaking. And it's not kayak fishing, it's kayaking. So it's designed for 7 to 12 foot recreational kayaks. People who want to putz around on their lake. That's not most anglers. That's not the Coosa HD.
Yeah.
When you move over to this kayak fishing specific guide, we're now taking into account additional factors. We're taking into high-low seat options. We're taking into account mechanized versus paddle kayaks. We're taking into account additional factors. So in the most basic sense, the table that we use is how wide your kayak is and how tall you are. How tall you are tells us how long your arms are, how big your torso is. How wide your kayak is how long do we need that shaft to be to get the blade sufficiently in the water. Okay, so that's the most basic thing. But there's about 3 to 5 other factors that you can take into account that'll get you as close to perfect size as humanly possible, right? So the first is the high-low seat option. Take a look at your seats. Does it have a standard higher seat, or is it more shallow and into the kayak a little bit? Do you have a high-low seat movement option? Because you probably want some variety, or maybe an adjustable length ferrule. Your paddling technique. So like you said, Josh, you're a little bit what we call high angle, and that means the blade is closer to you in the water. You're more vertical with your stroke. It's more athletic. Usually you use more of your core. You go at faster paces, those sorts of things. Typically will size you down. Also, the gunwale or the body of your kayak. Typically that'll help us know if you've got a sufficient blade or not. Additionally, your body style. If you're a bigger guy, you're probably going to have a certain type of more horizontal, probably relaxed paddling tendency. So there's these little factors that you can see on our website, or you can talk to somebody at our company, and they'll make sure. They'll be like, you know what, 240 is never going to work in a Coosa HD unless you're about 4'5".
Yeah.
I want to show you something probably closer to the 260 range, what I think will be sufficient in length, especially given your height and the seat position of that boat design. So again, getting the right size is huge. There's other factors that an expert can tell you about and make sure, but really we want to make sure it fits your paddling style, your boat, the types of waters you're going to be in, those sorts of things. Those little extra things, quick questions we can ask that'll move you one way or the other and get you closer to the right size.
Heck yeah.
Well, I'd almost guarantee both of mine are wrong then.
It's a lot.
But I've also, I used a bunch of different paddles, like lengths of y'all's, to see what I felt more comfortable with. And in my, I'm only 5'7", but in my shorter, narrower boat, the 240 is just more comfortable for me. Mm-hmm. And then in my, 41-inch wide Frontier 12, I could use all the way up to a 280 in that. I've kind of went all around and tried, and from 260 to 280, they all, are a good fit.
Yeah, Frontier for sure. A lot of 270, 280s in the Frontier for sure.
Yeah.
So like a good rule of thumb is if you have people at home right now and they're thinking like, all right, is my paddle too long or too short? Go sit in your kayak right now and do your normal paddle stroke. And if your first 20 strokes, your hands hit the side of your kayak once, your paddle's probably too short. If the whole blade, or we typically say the 80% rule. So if at least 80% of the blade is not in the water, your paddle's too short. And then the other thing too is if you've got 4 inches or more of your shaft in the water, your paddle's too long. What happens when your paddle's too long? You get extra weight, your kayak zigzags, and you're just overall inefficient. Yeah. So what's more common, unfortunately, is the short. So hands on the side of the gun wall, 80% of the blades or more. If those two things aren't happening, your paddle's probably too short.
Right. And it seems like a 260 centimeter is probably like the sweet spot for most people, right?
Yeah, it's become our best. I would say 3 years ago, 250 was our best seller. 260 is now our best seller.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with all the boat designs.
Yeah, and they're just getting wider and wider. So it's like, I mean, the boats aren't getting smaller by any means. So
right. See, I'm using a 270. You think that's weird for what I do?
Don't ever let anyone paddle size shame you if that can become a thing, right? Because there's so many factors. Like you could be the same height as somebody in the same boat and have different paddling styles and have completely different paddle length. It's
I'm gonna run around now and tell everybody that Brad's compensating for something with his paddle.
It's like, is it too long? But no, Andrew, you made a point though, because I was sitting there, I kept thinking, like I needed a longer paddle just based off of the fact that I kept hitting the side of my boat. But with my paddle style, that wouldn't have made sense. You were saying then it might be a shorter one might work out well. But I kind of started to, as you were talking about that, I was kind of like trying to think, okay, well, that kind of contradicts what I said. But then I thought about when was it that what would be happening where I would hit my boat like that. And where it was happening was when I was making adjustments, not when I was just paddling. Like if I'm fishing or whatever and I'm trying to turn, that's where I was having the issues at. I couldn't reach out and grab enough water. I was too close to the boat, making quick adjustments while I was fishing or, because I fish rivers a lot. So that's kind of where I was trying to think. I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. but why would I be hitting the side of my boat? And I was sitting there thinking about the situations where it was occurring, and that makes sense. So, but I mean, I made the jump from that Angler Scout to the Angler Pro, and I never looked back, man. It was, like I said, the single best accessory that I gotten for my kayak fishing, my career so far is just, that was it. It was lights out. It alleviated back pain for me. It made my time enjoyable out there. I mean, I always have fun, but like, you know, you just get done, your shoulders are sore, your core is sore, you know, and I don't have that as frequent. And, you know, a lot of people look at that and they're like, but man, that $99 is versus $299, you know? And it's like, and I told, like, cause I remember talking to Brad about it. One of the couple first times Brad and I went out, and I'm like, dude, I know you're going to think it's crazy, but like, it's worth every penny. Like, I was like, you know, it is expensive, but I was like, it's night and day difference of using the heavier paddle versus a lighter paddle. And, you know, the thing I can tell people is, you know, I've always said, always go for the longer kayaks when you first start out, and also go for an expensive paddle. Like you said, it's the motor. It will make your life much easier, especially if you're new to it. You know, that's the thing, is I wouldn't see why somebody who's new to it wouldn't want to try to get the best paddle that they can, because you're gonna go out there and you might get frustrated with it, and it's gonna hurt, and you're gonna be sore. And you know, if you want to kind of alleviate that, if you're somebody who has, you know, some health problems or physical health problems like that, you know, look into that. That might alleviate some of those issues, you know.
Something,
Oh, go ahead, Jimmy.
Something I remember from when I first got into kayaking, I think it was the guy that runs Headwaters Kayaks out there in California.
Yeah, his name's Dan Arbuckle.
Yeah. I remember a video he posted, and he was talking about it when you're buying your first boat. He said, if you've got $1,000 to spend, don't just buy a $1,000 kayak. Buy a $700 kayak and a $300 paddle, and you'll appreciate it later. And I didn't do that. My first boat was a feel free, and I got one of their paddles, and their paddle is lighter and still better than a store, you know, a box store paddle. But I got in a guy's boat at a demo day, and he handed me the Pro Carbon, and I was just like, oh, I understand. And that's when I bought my first Angler Pro. I didn't drop the big money on the Pro Carbon, but
yeah,
still,
yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Jimmy. That's you know, it's funny. So if we let me just take you down the path of most kayak anglers in their paddle journey, right? So what happens, right? They buy a used kayak, right? Buy a used kayak from a buddy, comes with a paddle, right? I guarantee it's the wrong size.
Ozark Trail.
Yep. And then they go to Bass Pro and they buy the Ozark Trail, or they buy the Ascend, whatever, right? And that comes with a paddle. And then they're like, this isn't really working. You know, I can tell I'm skimming myself short. I want to start sharing some of this stuff. And they start to check out some of those opening price points. And it's usually not till the third or fourth kayak that they actually start to realize or take the paddle seriously. And they're like, I didn't realize how bad it was.
Yeah.
You know, and then they start at one of our more economical price points, which are great. And there's nothing wrong with them. Right. So the way we design a paddle, if it's $100 paddle, we look at $100 and we say, how much performance and value can we put into this paddle? Like, let's jam as much into it as possible, so that when Josh or Brad or Jimmy gets their first paddle, they realize the value immediately, but also, you know, they realize there's another couple clicks that they can go to see the true value. They can go see what, you know, people that paddle 20 miles a day to see what type of stuff they use. It's the same designs. They're made in the same factory, right? So the same paddle we put in a 17-foot sea kayak for somebody to go circumnavigate a country is the same stuff we put in fishing paddles. You know, we just make them a little more robust. We add a little bit more reinforcement. There's more rolls of carbon fiber in the shaft. So those things are thought through. But yeah, I mean, essentially, when you start at those opening price points, how much value can we put in that paddle for the dollar, right? The Angler Scout. So many people start at the Angler Scout. There's nothing wrong with the Angler Scout.
I still love that paddle.
It's heavy, but it's designed to literally take on any paddling conditions.
Yeah.
You know, you got 700 pounds of weight in the kayak. What paddle can take it on, right? Because what we don't want is you to get your first real good quality paddle, good Benny Branches paddle. You probably invested. You convinced your wife it's worth it, right? And then it breaks right away. Like that's just not you know, it's just not something we can afford. And then you go up a price point, maybe to the Classic, right? Classic's our best seller, ton of value. You bump up to a little bit higher performing, lighter components, and you keep going all the way to the Ace, all the way up to the Pro, right? So the Pro is the Pro, right? It's won a ton of awards. It's got more performance. It's got it's got carbon fiber and composite material that with technology we borrowed from, Boeing type aviation type quality stuff. So it's literally the most expensive stuff we can get our hands on. And that's what you're noticing. You're noticing, oh, like my back doesn't hurt as much. Well, yeah, it's because it's the same stuff they put in race bikes, the same stuff they put in jet airplanes. It's the same stuff. We just laminate it into a blade by a redneck in Western Wisconsin, but it's the same type of materials. So I genuinely feel you get what you pay for. You
get 100%. But if anything, that paddle, like there's a lot of stuff in the fishing industry that I don't feel like when you pay that much for it, you really see it. I mean, there is other stuff, but the paddle for sure is with Bending Branches is something like Josh is saying, like probably his best purchase, favorite upgrade he's done in kayak fishing. I figure most people could say that and be completely honest.
Yeah, and you described my journey as a kayak fisherman to a T. I went 3. You guys are laughing, but it's true. I went 3 kayaks, had a crappy paddle the whole time, and then I finally invested in an Angler Classic about 4 years ago. Had that for a couple years, and then Josh was gracious enough to let me use his Angler Pro, and on a trip, he actually used your wife's Whisper paddle or something like that, right? During that trip, it was pink, I think.
No. I had my Angler Scout still because I had the Kusa HD, and I had that's the boat I still had at the time when we went, right? Yeah. Well, I had that kayak, and I had both paddles with me. I just brought mine. So
right, you suffered all day, so I could check out the amazingness of the Angler Pro.
Well, I mean, so it's like Andrew's talking about, like a lot of people get the sticker shock from it, and I'm like, dude, but it's, you've had the Classic, and I'm like, it's just try it out. That's what all I got to say. I'm like, I guarantee if you spend an 8-hour day with that paddle, that you'll be sold on it.
Oh,
so
I had my own Angler Classic like 2 weeks later.
That's just how
Angler
Pro. Yeah.
That's how Brad kind of is, though. Like, he doesn't look like he wants to spend money ever. And then he turns around and buys a Torpedo. You know what I'm saying? Like,
he had 5 kayaks.
Like, gotta have it.
I think who is it that Barney Stinson from How I Met Your Mother knew was always better. But yeah, I mean, you described my journey to a T. I just thought that was hilarious.
So, yeah, for sure.
Off of how you started that conversation, we could segue over. You were talking about, you get into it with a cheap boat and a paddle that came with it, and this isn't for me, and a lot of guys are, still using the wrong paddle or don't like paddling, and that's when they get into the mechanized end of it, motors and paddles and pedals. I'm sorry, and like you were saying, how does a great paddle company stay relevant with the direction kayak fishing is going with that?
Yep. That's a great question. Okay. So look at our industry today, and how many paddle only companies are there? Not many. You get a lot of paddles from stores, box stores. There's a lot of big conglomerates that also sell paddles. But when you only make paddles, you get pretty good at it. Right? What do your engineers test? Paddles. What does your customer service team talk about? Paddles. When you go to shows, what do you sell? Paddles. So the focus, the dedication leads to a sheer determination that regardless of the price point, regardless of who you are as an angler, regardless of your background or your budget, you're going to get a genuine person that cares and is going to make sure you got the right gear. I don't care if you're in a mechanized boat. You should be. Mechanized boat pedals are awesome. Are you kidding me? You're a fool if you don't think it. But if you need to paddle, if you need to maneuver your boat, or if you get stranded, or if something goes wrong, Or if you want to flip to if you're in shallower waters, I'd prefer to have something I trust. And I can confidently say I don't trust any brand better than our own, because I've seen it and I know the people and I know what's behind it. I can tell you, like, if my life depended on it in a paddling situation, I would want our stuff, 100%.
Oh yeah.
It's tested, it's proven, it's designed for a specific application. It's designed for you to fish from. Okay, so anyone can put a tape measure on the shaft. Anyone can put a notch in the blade or make things color, a color you like or pretty. But ultimately, if someone's going to put it through the robust testing that it takes for you to be put in that application, absolutely. If you want to be in any mechanized boat, I think it's awesome, and I don't blame you for the slightest. That's why the market is headed that way, and that's why it's so awesome. But I genuinely think, if buy our cheapest paddle, buy a Whisper for $60, and at least put something on there that you can confidently know that if you need it, you're going to be proud, and you're not going to have to worry about it. It's like a spare tire in the back of your car, right?
Yeah.
If your spare tire doesn't work and you get a flat, what good's the spare tire?
I like that. I like that analogy, and I always tell people that you still need a paddle if you have pedals, because I know, like say like a Hobie, you're not going to be able to use that Hobie until you're away from shore in at least 2 feet of water.
100%.
And that's where you're going to need a paddle.
100%.
Well, and then like a lot of like myself, like I have pedals with one boat, and I have a motorized kayak. That's just to get me to what I like to fish. Once I get over there, I'm marred up in grass and stuff. Drive comes out, and the bending branches paddle comes right back out. I mean, it doesn't. It's not an end game by going mechanized. I mean, my paddles still get abused in all of my boats, whether it's paddle only or motor.
Right. See, I like the motors and everything, but it like you said, when I get to the spot, the paddle comes out, I just feel like I can adjust quicker and get a cast in faster than I can with like a motor or pedals.
Sure.
I'm not knocking the pedal drives or anything. It's just I've experienced the turn radius on some of these kayaks, and I'm not really that impressed.
Yeah, especially when you're trying to maintain position.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and we hear that a lot. So I remember in like 2015 or 16 when people were like, "Oh man, you guys are gonna start making pedals, like mechanized boats. What are you guys gonna do?" And I'm like, "This is the same thing we've done, forever. So we'll just, we'll let things settle, and when people need something that they can trust, we'll still be here."
right.
Ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. I think the average angler the average angler isn't in a pedal drive either. Most of them are still paddling because they can't afford that price point of a pedal drive.
Yep, for sure.
You said something about sticker shock. It's like the good paddle is like your first good investment when you first get into it, and then it's all downhill from there. It's like bending branches helps you spend good money. And then it's like, you know what? That $5,000 kayak's not too expensive.
No.
Bending branches paddles the gateway drug. You finally pulled the trigger on. You're like, all right, now let's go ahead and get that 10-inch screen depth finder, and
geez,
I got a motor attached to the back. It's like, but here's maybe you could throw this recommendation out then, because Brad and I and Jimmy, actually, the three of us are like diehard river guys at heart.
Yeah.
And that's still my favorite way to fish. Like, I mean, I went to St. Clair and had the smallmouth fest, and it was a blast. But there's nothing like, I go out fishing in the rivers, and it's not really as much about fishing as it is. It's in a sense for me, it's like sort of hiking, it's that kind of relief for me. So like I just wanted to get your opinion then. What do you think is the best bending branches paddle out there for the river guy who still wants to kind of keep it pure like that? Just paddle, no motors, no pedals, just go out, do some smallmouth fishing. And, what do you think overall best, looking at like durability, weight, that sort of thing?
So the best river paddling a fishing paddle that we have, in my opinion, is the Angler Ace. And if you go to Middle Tennessee, it's most of our sales because it's shallow, it's rocky. There's some rapids along the way, and we sell angler aces, just crazy. And it's just what I describe it as. So the angler ace was designed and built by our operations manager, and engineer by trade, super practical. Everything has to be data driven, justified, performance, tip to tip. Like, what could you put in a paddle that you could put in any condition and absolutely love? He made the ace. So the ace is carbon from tip to tip. So you get the carbon shaft like the Pro, but you get our strongest blade. And anytime you can injection mold carbon fiber and nylon pellets together in a gas assisted mold, it's the strongest option there is.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of performance for the dollar and robustness for any rocky river conditions, whether it's shallow, you're pushing off something, you're stuck between maybe you got stuck between a strainer or something, any type of those uncertain conditions, I always start with the ace. Truly believe it's the best value of what we offer. If you want to be a little bit more price conscious, the classic is awesome as well. It's just, I don't want to say a touch more fragile, but it's just a nice click down, just a nice step down, a little bit lower in price, similar value, similar performance, and you're going to get a lot of value for the dollar at either of those two price points. If you want to go above the ace, generally speaking, I try and talk people into the Angler Navigator, like Jimmy talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Angler Navigator is super freaking tough. The way that blade is designed, the way that's laid up, it's designed and packed to have so much robustness. You can put it in anything. And generally speaking, when I talk to river anglers, they're more concerned with durability and the unknown, whether it's tight conditions, rocky conditions, maybe a little bit of rapids, those sorts of things. So I typically won't go one of those three routes.
I completely agree with that. I think the Angler Ace is a great paddle, and then the Angler Navigator, I own one. I'm afraid to take that thing out because it's so beautiful, man.
Dude, so I broke mine in right on the second trip. I do a lot of loop casting and skipping, and I was throwing a heavy jig, and I reared up and tossed that thing as hard as I could, and I hit the paddle. And now I have a quarter-sized dent in that paddle. And it's just, it didn't mess the paddle up or anything. I've had no problems with it, but I smacked it, and it just made me sick. But now I'm not afraid to, push off the rocks or, I've used it as trekking poles, going from like one pond to the other. It was the keepsake, and now it's the workhorse. So
here's your pointer of the day for anyone that owns an Angler Navigator, any wood paddle. Take care of the wood. Service the wood like you would anything, you want to keep looking timeless. So you can kind of sand out any dent you get, any scratches you get in there, any bevels to the wood. You can sand that out and revarnish it. Put a fresh coat of varnish over top and maintain that wood just like old canoeists used to do with their paddles. And that will prolong the life quite a bit. And if you don't feel comfortable doing it, you can send your paddle to us and we'll do it. Your varnish isn't going to be as good as ours. Our varnish is super proprietary, but the basic marine grade varnish that you get can just do wonders for prolonging the life of it. Wood is not delicate. Our wood is super reinforced, but those little extra things can keep your paddle literally lasting decades and decades.
Interesting.
It's good to know. I wasn't sure like how much of the blade was actually wood. I didn't know if it was like an overlay or if it was even actually, like quality wood. I mean, not that y'all would skimp. I just, with blades going to the, plastic, nylon, and carbon, and, different types of glass and stuff like that, I wasn't really sure, but it, I smacked the mess out of it, and it's held up perfectly fine. I've had it all year like that. And I've actually only been using that paddle up until recently.
Yeah, wood's tricky to manufacture. So when you work with wood, you want to be smart about which woods you use. You want to use dense woods. You want to use durable woods, sustainable woods, things like that. But the amount of like sustainability practices and manufacturing procedures we have to follow to work with wood, very labor intensive.
Oh, I bet.
So generally speaking, margins on wood products are always the worst, just because there's so much you have to do in order to buy wood, in order to cut wood, in order to be sustainable and organic with wood. Like there's so many things we have to go through, and it's worth it. It's worth it. But I always say, like, the wood that's the best wood that we have access to. We used to still take care of it. You know, you want it to last forever.
Yep. Jimmy,
Yeah, man.
look like you're about to say something.
Oh no, I thought you were. I'm looking at your bubble. I could hear you breathing, and your bubble was moving. So I thought you were talking.
Do you guys finish with like 10 fast questions, or do you guys like to get into like favorite spots, favorite jigs, favorite stories? How do you guys got to do something playful, right?
I mean, we can throw something together real quick. I don't think we usually do, but
For some reason, I know Jimmy's got stories, but I got a feeling Josh has got some stories that he's just kind of just sitting on. That he's just.
You're 100% right. The
All
first
right.
time I met Josh, his stories, all of his stories are gold.
Yeah, you know when you see somebody and you're just like, I want to sit around a campfire and drink bourbon and hear everything you have to say.
Here's what's funny is I don't drink anymore because I used to drink too much, and it's hilarious because I get everybody, we go out fishing and people are like, they're drinking, and they're like, well, why don't you have a beer with us? I'm like, well, let me tell you this one story. They're like, all right, yeah, you're right, you shouldn't have any.
well, you could tell them about how Trash Panda came to be.
Yeah. I mean, that joke's kind of lame, or that story's a little lame. It's hilarious, but so back in the day, me and my friends, we used to like play tricks on each other camping, and we used to like, if somebody was being like stupid that night or like out of control, we would like throw food around their tent because I used to backpack a lot. So then raccoons would literally come up and bother their tent all night. Well, when I first met Brian and Jay was at Cowan Lake not this past summer before, for the Ohio meetup for paddle and fin. And they made their way down from Chicago, and we had this big, like, kind of like get together. It was about 20 people or so. And we were joking around, and we were talking about something, and I took the rib bones, they had made ribs, and I threw them underneath Brian and Jay's camper. And so, because I was like, dude, it's going to be like, I've been to Cowan Lake. They have this huge raccoon problem, right? And it backfired and bit me in the ass. And the raccoons came out of the woods right next to my tent. So as they would, like, there was a trail. And all night long, I would just hear these raccoons come out of the woods and rub against my tent as they were walking over to the camper, just back and forth all night. And we were laughing about that. And Jay said, something about trash pandas. And I'd heard that term before, and I forgot about it and how golden it really is. So, we nicknamed, like, we were laughing about it through the whole weekend. And then I acquired the nickname Trash Panda. So
got it.
I love it.
That's a good story.
That story, and Josh and Milford and the cheese.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good one too. It's been told a million times though.
Yeah, it's been like on the pod like 300 times probably. It's
so bad.
Well, we can let's do this. We can close out this this segment with a crazy paddling story from Andrew, if you got one.
Yeah, I got stories for sure. So at Benny Branches, you pretty much have to paddle to work here. It's not required before you come to work here, but eventually you will become a paddler. It's basically pre-pandemic. Every Thursday, factory shuts down about 4:00. We hit a local river, and as much as I paddle, as long as I've paddled, I mean, I've paddled 37 miles in a given day, so I know what I'm doing. I still have a tendency to dip all the time. I don't know what it is. I like if there's like a 5% chance that if you hit this one strainer you're going to go in, I find a way to hit it. So every trip we go on these trips called otter hole trips, and I can't really tell the reason why it's called the otter hole trip, but I'll tell you it's called the otter hole trip. And you go on these trips, and every year we do it in like April, and in Wisconsin in April it's still cold. rivers are just defrosting. It gets below freezing at night. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the trip is. I find a way in. And I mean, there's been trips where I've just given up on my kayak. I've given up on my gear. I dry suit the works, and I just abandoned ship. And I don't know what it is. And if you ask anyone here, and they'd be like, "Hey, I heard Andrew's pretty good at paddling or kayaking. Does he ever flip?" They'll tell you something. So even though I've been here a long time, it's still one of my more embarrassing things is I find a way into the water.
Knock on wood, I still haven't went in. So I've had ridiculously close. I mean, like I got stuck on a rock and my buddy T-boned me. He went out and I didn't. Don't know how that happened. And then I had my flint. I got washed in it's like a cutback and the current swirled. It was like the current was crossing real bad. And it I shifted my weight wrong and it stood the flint up on its side. And I was so far over trying to stay in it. I had my hand around the boat and in the scupper hole holding on. And I somehow got it back down. Didn't lose any gear. One of my legs got wet, but I never came out of the boat. And that was my last close call. So far, I haven't went for a swim.
I haven't either, man, but I know it's going to happen because it happens to all of us.
First time me and you fish together, it's happening. I'm going to throw you in.
All right, I got some quick questions to try and make it playful for you guys. Close this out. Of the high-profile anglers in our industry, who's your guys' favorite?
Oh, Drew Gregory, no question.
Russ Snyder.
Awesome.
Has nothing to do with his tournament finishes. When you meet Russ and just talk to him, he's so genuine, and he is so smart with like fishing, like the detail. And I mean, Drew is too.
Yeah.
Russ is like you just connect with Russ. It's like he's known you his whole life when you meet him. Don't say Brad.
No, dude, Brad's on the bottom. Brad's like the janitor.
He's the janitor. There's his new nickname.
No, I'd have to say Matt Ball. I've always been a big fan of Matt. I remember, reading stuff and seeing videos with him when I first kind of got into this. I've always been a huge fan of Drew also. But like one of our local guys, Aaron, Aaron, right, Brad?
Aaron Steiger.
Yeah. Aaron was the one who kind of got me into like specifically the Coos HD and he was just putting out these YouTube videos and I was like, that's what exactly, because he lived in Ohio and stuff like that. And it's just I kind of fell upon his videos, through Jackson, researching Jackson. And I was like, well, this guy lives just up north from here. And, his rivers look exactly like mine. And, and I got to meet him, a couple years ago and super friendly person, like really down to earth. And, like he's just a really cool guy. And I appreciate that. There's nothing worse than, as niche as kayak fishing kind of is in a sense, it's getting bigger and bigger, obviously. But, it's just, there's a difference between what you see of people social media wise and how they truly are in real life. You can make yourself look to be the best person on the planet on Facebook, but you can suck as a person when somebody truly talks to you. And Aaron and Matt, I've never met Matt, but I've kind of talked to him a little bit through Facebook. He's just genuine. And I've met some people who've, talked to him as well. But Aaron was super, super genuine. The first time I ever met him, totally friendly, came out, fished with us, and it's just, that kind of goes a long way for me, so, and I'm not a big tournament guy, so I don't get to meet as many high profile names as like Jimmy does. And, like some of the other guys do because they fish more of a national kind of level than I do. Mine's real local and I rarely do local tournaments, but that's, I like genuine, true to their, selves. I mean, if you want to be a jerk, just be a jerk, be a jerk all around, like Josh Smith at Dark Waters. That guy sucks. Jesus, dude.
We have an ongoing joke with that guy.
Brad, did you do his negative review? Was that you?
Yes.
Yeah, he asked me to.
Okay.
So I had to.
I can't remember what it said, Andrew,
today-
but they sent us a picture of like somebody left a just garbage review of his podcast, and it was Brad. That's great.
Well, there was a few guys that did it, but I was one of them.
It's funny. I just talked to him this week.
Josh Smith posted today trying to get people to subscribe to his YouTube channel. I was like, oh, yeah, I subscribe to the worst thing on YouTube. Thanks. It's like everybody's going to keep it going now that he did it. Like, okay, if you don't know who Josh Smith is, Andrew, he's a dude from New York, ex-Marine. He started a kayak fishing. He drinks, curses. I love this.
Chucks the beer and swears the entire podcast, right?
Yes, love it. It's hilarious. And he did our tournament, our little bracket tournament with us last year, and he came on. And the episode that he came on was priceless. It was like inviting WWF straight into the podcast. Like he came in hyped, cussing, talking smack, and so we've all kind of messed around with each other since then. But he kind of stirred the pot, and he said, "Hey, go give me a review, the worst review you can. I'm trying to grow my my fan base." So everybody's been dropping just obnoxious reviews for him.
That's been awesome.
Some of them are pretty good. So
yeah, he asked for some stuff, and I didn't know anything about him, and I started watching some of his podcasts and looking at the comments. I was like, this guy is really eccentric. Like, I'm really confused. Then I started reading further. I was like, oh, it's satirical. Oh, this guy's actually pretty well liked. This guy's actually pretty funny.
yeah,
And I told him, I was like, no, we're not doing donations right now, but I'm happy to talk to you about something in the future. He was so excited, and he emails exactly like he talks, which I love people like that.
yeah,
That's awesome.
It's funny.
We love you, Josh.
Yeah.
I know he's listening. So
One of my favorite things to do is to like I told you guys, I've been here a long time, and when I first worked here, I was really young. I was fresh out of college. I was super skinny, right? And I did all these fishing videos right when kayak fishing just started. Like, we just launched it. I was in all these videos, all these like fishing videos, wanted to interview us on stuff, and I was a tiny human being. And then I got older. I got into my late 20s. I got married, right? And you pack it on a little bit, right? And I gained quite a bit of weight. So then, when videos come out 5, 7, 8 years later, I like to go in and comment on a video that I'm in and say, I remember watching a video of that guy from 2011. He was like 70 pounds lighter. What happened to him? And I just sit and wait for people to comment and be like, shouldn't fat shame people on the internet. It's not nice.
you know what's funny is I could see John Hipsher doing that.
John would do that now. John's super skinny.
Yeah. I
So
could see him doing that.
If you go back to
That's like advanced way of trolling is by trolling yourself. And
I
then
troll myself. If you go back and look at comments, old videos I was in, it's me commenting being like, what happened to that guy? Bet you got married. Anyone want to take a bet?
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
who's one of your favorite high profile people in our industry?
He's not allowed to say.
No, I could say I don't care. They'll call me tomorrow. I don't care. I'll talk to them. Tell them right to their face. That's the beauty, though, is I've been fortunate enough to meet most big people. I mean, I meet people from other companies. People, like Jim Salmons. I really enjoyed having dinner with him one time. I would say the guy that I genuinely enjoyed meeting the most was probably Gene Jensen. And him and I met at the Jackson Summit probably 5, 7, 8 years ago. And he doesn't drink. And I just sat down with him. And I remember we got up and it was 5 hours later. And I was just like, and then I didn't know him. He didn't know me. And he's talking to me like I'm at his level. Right. And he went to the bathroom, and I remember Jameson Redding and came up and he's like, do you know who you're talking to? And I'm like, yeah, Gene. And he's like, Google or YouTube Fluke Master. And I was just like, oh, okay. I looked up and I'm like, and he's like, yeah. And he was just the nicest, most genuine dude. But I would say Drew Gregory is sensationally nice guy. Drew Gregory came to my wedding. So I would say he's really nice. Jameson Redding is probably one of the most genuinely knowledgeable and well-connected people. I'm a big fan of him. And then you can't go wrong with Chad Hoover. You pull back everything you see online, and you actually meet him and spend time with him. Like he's just a Navy redneck that loves to fish and bullshit.
Yeah, he's a goofy dude. Me and Josh met him last year at our fishing show.
Yeah, so
he likes that fun.
Him and I have shared a lot of stories too. So I would say all those guys are really good. They'll have really, really good choice in paddles as well. Matt Ball's also a sensational guy. Big fan of Matt Ball. But all the guys you mentioned, it's one of the beauties of this industry is even competitors. I will call up a competitor tomorrow and we'll have a genuine conversation about work and life, and it'll be cordial. And I could talk about anyone in this industry, and I would genuinely say I don't have a single enemy. So that's the beauty of this is talking to you guys or talking to anyone. It's good people, good, honest, good, wholesome people. It's fun to come to work. You know, my wife's in funeral care, right? And she's been in funeral care for a decade. Talk about polar opposite. We come home with stories, and the perspective is just night and day. And that frames that's a frame of reference with me. So like somebody who's a former pro staffer of ours who has been booted from the team for 3 years will call, and I'll take the call. You know, it might be awkward, but I'll take the call. I'd be happy to talk to you. Tell me about what's up. You healthy? You doing okay? Getting time on the water, those sorts of things. So it's just perspective.
Awesome. Well, we'll wrap this up, man. We're past an hour. It was a good episode. I enjoy having you on, man. It was a pleasure meeting you and finally talking to you. It's been a long time coming.
Thanks, Brad. Yeah, this is fun. See you guys tomorrow.
Yeah, same time tomorrow.
I wish that we really could do stuff like that. Like we had Drew on our show recently, and you know, like that show could have went for like 5 hours.
Yeah,
and, you know, we've had a lot like Greg Blanchard. Greg was on the show after the show almost as long as he was on the show. We were just still going, and I wish we had a segment where we could just either keep it going or just be like an open invite for whoever wanted in every night. But
that'd be cool.
With Paddle and Fin, we got so many shows. You know, we're kind of covered with space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's all good. Well, we'll close this
guys.
up, man.
It's been awesome. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Whenever Bending Branches releases something new, we'll have you back on.
We're working on it. Just because there's a pandemic, that doesn't mean the geniuses here are not working. We're taking our time and trying to make sure whenever we do what's next, it's worth it.
Awesome. Can't wait. All right, guys, we'll close it out. Thanks for listening. Tune in tomorrow. I don't remember what show's on tomorrow because the schedule changed, but you'll hear back from us next week. We'll see you later.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode on Paddle and Fin. Don't forget to go check out our website at paddle.fin.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at Paddle and Fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest on a future episode, feel free to email us at paddle@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paddle and Fin on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our show supporters, Angler. The Angler button and app just makes for a better time on the water and creates a virtual logbook for every fishing outing out on the water. Shout out to Rocktown Adventures, located in Northern Illinois, for all your kayaking, camping, and hiking needs. Shout out to Jig Masters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com